All right, lots to break down on this case. So let's go to our legal panel. Matt Murphy, former homicide prosecutor, and journalist Robert Rand, who has covered the original 2 trials of the Menendez brothers and has been on this story for decades now. He's the author of The Menendez Brothers, the shocking untold story of the Menendez family and the killings that stunned the nation. All right, Matt, first I want to get, Nathan Hochman. What's your reaction to him saying these guys, these brothers, they're liars, they got to stay in prison until they admit every single lie?
Well, there's a fundamental concept when it comes to parole in particular, and this would be like super parole because they got life without possibility of parole, but it's called insight, that an inmate, as a general proposition, foundationally, has to accept what they did, admit it before the parole board will consider them to be eligible for release. So, look, I agree with everything that Nathan Hochman said today. I think a lot of rational people do. And his main beef is that they're still running this defense that they were, in fact, in fear for their lives the night they murdered their mother and the night they murdered their father, right? So under the doctrine of imperfect self-defense, that's the only way that works. They must actually, but unreasonably, fear for their lives at the moment they apply deadly force to their victims.
Yeah.
And that's always been a stretch, but he nailed it. It's like, admit that's a lie, and then we can have a conversation because you have spent 35 years for the murder of your parents.
Robert, you covered both those trials. You know that there's a lot of evidence that shows that at that moment that they pulled the triggers repeatedly, shooting their mom and their dad, that there is a lot of evidence they weren't, in fact, in fear for their lives.
Well, neither Mr. Hochman nor, I believe, Matt were there at the trials in the 1990s. And the first thing I want to say is that Nathan Hochman talked about the brothers had made 16 different lies that they need to atone for or need to admit that they lied. And each of those 16 different issues were litigated and resolved during the first trial. So for Mr. Hochman to come forward now and say, well, they lied, they had all these lies, it's really not accurate from what happened at the trials.
Matt, I was really struck by something Hochman said that kind of jumped out at me, which is that he believes that Eric and Lyle Menendez pose, quote, an unreasonable risk to public safety if they were freed.
Well, let me go back to that last comment. The idea that they didn't lie, I'm sorry, with respect to the other guest, is laughable. They lied to the 911 operators. They lied to the detectives. They lied on the stand. None of those things were ever resolved. They said that they shot them in their knees. They shot their parents in their knees to make this look like a mafia hit.
No, they didn't.
On the stand. On the stand.
Let him finish.
On the stand. Eric testified in the first trial that they didn't buy the shotguns ahead of time. They didn't have fake IDs. They lied repeatedly, and the only reason why Lyle didn't testify in the second trial is he got caught on a hot mic by some court groupie when he bragged about how well he lied in the first trial. So when you're talking about that those were resolved, I literally have no idea what you're talking about. Everybody knows they lied. The question is, were they molested as kids, and did that justify it? And were they in actual belief of death or great bodily harm at the time they shot their parents? They lied repeatedly, and Nathan Hochman was right.
Robert?
No. Nathan Hochman never mentioned imperfect self-defense, which was the defense that was offered at the first trial. And there were 58 defense witnesses in that first trial, 2 juries, 1 for each brother. The defense put out a very detailed presentation of what was going on with this family that was spinning wildly out of control. And half the jurors in that first trial voted for manslaughter, and they didn't believe this was murder. In the second trial, the trial judge, Stanley Weisberg, reversed almost all of his evidence rulings, did not allow the defense to argue imperfect self-defense, and the second trial was a complete miscarriage of justice.
Nathan Hochman literally just described imperfect self-defense. And you're right, I wasn't there, I'm not a journalist, but I am a lawyer and I've done a lot of these. What he just described on the clip we watched was imperfect self-defense.
Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.